My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Chadwick Boseman. Today, as we record this, is the day we found out that he passed away. He's very young. It looks like he had a massive career ahead of him. And I was excited for Black Panther 2 and just everything else he had to go for him. So,
what he did for putting a black hero on screen, that there's going to be so many young black children who will have had that as their sort of first, big cinema experience. It's just a real shock and a real loss for someone so young.
To lose someone who's so energetic, so powerful, and speaks so eloquently on the black story, I think that is a massive loss.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined by Esther.
Hey.
Jass.
Hey.
And Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the Spike Lee classic. Is it a classic? BlacKkKlansman.
Thank you, as always, to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher.
Hello film fans. Joining Flixwatcher remotely today we have Jass and Esther. If you would like to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Okay, so we are the Well-Spoken Tokens. We've got a podcast about being people of colour and marginalised voices in specifically like galleries, libraries, archives, museums, but also the cultural sector in general. And we do talk about pop culture and how sort of representation is really important, about how we see the world and things we interact with. So that's, a little summary of who we are as a podcasting team.
And your podcast is quite new, isn't it? Can you tell us how you came about the idea and what happens in an episode?
We came about the idea because I have a need to shout into a void about my anger, and then people actually started listening to it. But that's how it came about. And what we do is we have a theme every week. We have a guest on, we discuss. So they tend to be either researching or a professional about the theme that we're discussing. So one that's just come out, or would have come out a few weeks ago once this podcast goes out, is about disability in the glam sector, galleries, libraries, archives and museums. And we had a lovely woman called Gabrielle on, and she discussed her personal experience of being a disabled person working in the sector and her research on how we can improve it for disabled people in the sector as well. So we try and make sure that we get a vast, really diverse array of people on who not only have personal experience of marginalisation within the sector, but also have solutions to it as well, which I think is really great, because it means that we're not just screaming to the void, we're actually screaming suggestions at people as well of things that they could do.
Yeah, we're not just whinging about stuff that happens, we're also saying, you know what, there are people who do really good stuff, let's have a look at them and maybe do things a little bit better.
Yeah, and try and big up people who are doing the hard work. And we have a segment called Pop Culture Reference of the Week, where we relate everything back to a popular culture reference in order to try and make it more relatable for people who might not be in the sector. The first one we ever did was Black Panther, R.I.P. Chadwick, rest in power. And it was the scene in the museum, the fake museum that they made up.
Well, it was in the museum in London, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was not the British Museum.
Yeah, where Killmonger is being patronised by one of the people who work there.
Yeah.
And I think every single person of colour or who has ever been patronised by a white person trying to tell them about their own culture had the same exact reaction in the cinema or anywhere that they ended up watching the film.
I live in London now, not from London, and I came out that screen going, is there a Museum of London? I had to do a quick Google.
There is.
Is there a museum?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, there is. My friend used to work there, and basically people would come up to him and be like, "Is this the British Museum?" And he's like, "No, you're in the wrong place."
Oh, am I talking about? I'm sure they made. Maybe I got the name wrong for the museum they made up in Black Panther.
No,
I'm sure
I do think it was called something like the Museum of London, but it wasn't the Museum of London that they filmed.
It was like London Museum of something. It was definitely made up one, but it was very much like meant to be the British Museum.
But yeah, and then we watched that together as well. Like I think the first time we started talking about doing the podcast, we sat down and we watched Black Panther together back in the days when we could spend time in each other's houses.
Well, I mean, let's just... You did say rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. Today, as we record this, is the day we found out that he passed away after a number of years undergoing cancer treatment, and it's been a bit of a shock for everyone. You know, I was absolutely gutted when I randomly woke up like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, checked Twitter, as I do randomly, and that was there, and I thought it was a hoax, because this guy seemed, in the films I'd seen him in, peak physical kind of health. He's Black Panther, he's in Marvel movies, looks to be smashing it. He's very young, and he looks like he had a massive career ahead of him, and I was excited for Black Panther 2 and just everything else he had going for him. So I don't know, this seems like a bit more of a shock than other people who unfortunately have passed away recently. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah,
I mean, he's 43, which is just, that's like, I'm 41, so like having someone who's so close in age to me as well, like that's really, and you know, I love his films, and you know, I watched Da 5 Bloods just because we were going to be talking about another Spike Lee film today, and in that, you know, it's, you know, he does seem really vibrant and he's got this amazing energy. So to lose someone who's so energetic, so powerful, and speaks so eloquently on the Black story, I think that is a massive loss.
And for the amount of work that he put into the promo for Black Panther, going to hospitals, speaking to Black kids all over the world, like really putting all that effort in, because he knew how important that portrayal was going to be to generations and generations of kids of colour. I just think, it's just a massive loss.
Helen, any thoughts? You're a Marvelite. You dip into Marvel, don't you, rather than completist?
Marvel or DC? I need to know.
Oh, Marvel. But I haven't seen Black Panther yet. I think it came out at a time when I'd been over-Marveled and other things like life kind of get in the way, and I didn't manage to see it at the cinema. But yeah, a real shock, I think. And also the fact that he didn't want to tell people about it and didn't make it a thing and never sort of said anything at all. You know, the strength to do that and to carry on in public. Because I was reading some other things that people had made sort of comments about various weight loss and things, you know, that seemed a little bit strange, and he just kind of brushed them off. It's just, you know, it's really cheesy, but he kind of felt like an actual superhero in that what he did for putting a Black hero on screen, that there's going to be so many young Black children who will have had that as their sort of first, you know, big cinema experience, is, you know, how are they feeling? Like, to know today the news, it's just a real shock and a real loss for someone so young.
I think it's what one thing is important that you said there, Helen, is that he kept it to himself. It was a private thing. And it reminds me of when David Bowie passed and people were like, well, shouldn't we have known he had cancer? Like, well, you don't need to. He had a public and a private side to himself. And I think that's how you choose to portray yourself is a very important thing. And that's part of his dignity. And I think David Bowie's dignity as well, you know.
It's so important, though, to kind of, I think, voice the opinion that even though he carried on doing what he loved and what he wanted to do when he was in between undergoing treatment, that shouldn't be the norm. Like, I mean, it's amazing that he carried on doing that, but the people who are undergoing cancer treatment and just sitting in their pajamas listening to podcasts is also amazing. Like, there's no right way to have cancer. Just people can do it however they see fit.
So that's a slight digression, but I think a worthy one. But we are talking today about BlacKkKlansman, which is your choice, Jass.
Yes.
Can you tell us why you chose it and give us a synopsis in less than a minute?
I chose it because I think it's hilarious. I love dark humor. I think it's hilarious. I love the fact that it's a true story. And I just love any situation in which someone from like a traditionally marginalized background tricks someone from a traditionally not marginalized background. So in the film, a black man joins a police force in his town, and he's the first black police officer. And he decides to ring a chapter of the KKK, and he puts on his white voice, and he manages to get a meeting set up with the chapter of the KKK in his town, and then goes to his boss and says, I've got this opportunity. With the right white man, we can achieve anything. And then they find a white Jewish man to pretend to be him, and they basically spend the entire film trying to make sure that they don't get caught.
Nice. So, how many times have you seen this then, Jass?
About 4 or 5.
Why are you nervous saying that?
I don't know, because I was like, I don't know if that's too much or too little. It's on Netflix now, so hey.
But you wanted us to watch it again. I mean, Esther, what were your thoughts on BlacKkKlansman?
So I remember, because I watched it at the cinema, I have a really cushy side hustle and I get to see lots of films for free. So I think I might have seen it twice at the cinema. I definitely saw it at least once. I remember going in the lift to see it, and there were two white people in, and they had tickets and they were clearly going to see it, and they were like, I didn't know how to ask for the film title, and it was really hilarious to me because they were like, they felt really uncomfortable using the word Klan. And yeah, it was, I think I probably saw it with a predominantly white audience the first time. I've seen it once. I saw it, once or twice at the cinema, and then I saw it. This is the first time I've seen it since it was out at the cinema. So
I think that's so funny because, like I always say on our podcast as well, if someone can't say the word black to describe someone, they have no black friends. But can you imagine like being someone who can't say the word black or has to whisper it, and then also having to say Klansman in the same word? It would be so good.
Yeah, and apparently this was pretty common. The box office staff were saying that lots of people were kind of like, we're watching that Spike Lee film and stuff like that. So yeah, but I haven't watched it since, not for any specific reason.
Well, there's lots of fun to watch them, isn't there?
I do enjoy some Spike Lee. I always enjoy some Spike Lee. When you told me which one you picked as well, when Jass told me, I was like, damn it, I should have picked something more political. So I was very envious of this choice, and I was glad to revisit it.
Helen, BlacKkKlansman.
Yeah, I saw this at the cinema. I can't remember what the demographic of the audience was, which I kind of wish that I did now, but it was at Brixton a long time ago, and it was the big one, the big screen one. And it was, I really liked it. I think it's great. I think it's funny. I think there's those things that we're going to talk about it.
Well, you don't need to hold back now.
So I think watching it the second time, so there's a couple of things that Spike Lee added to it because obviously it's based on a book, and a lot of people had a few problems with the fact that the bomb plot, they made that up. Patrice didn't exist, so they kind of introduced a love interest.
I do have a thing about Patrice, though. Patrice is the name of his of the person who's actually based on. It's the name of his now wife, or the person that he's been with for years. So I thought that was a sweet touch. Yeah.
So there was those things, and also when Spike Lee took it on, one of the things he added was the comedic moments, and those kind of see to be the sort of big things that when people sort of criticize it, that's what they pull up. But for me, when I rewatched it, I think this film is more actually talking about now than it is actually talking about the 70s, in that what Lee is actually saying is that, you know, when they make that joke about someone like Duke could become president, they're obviously talking about Trump being president, and obviously the ending as well. I think it's actually more talking about America now, and then by actually talking about something that's happened in the past, he can sort of get away with making that movie without making a film that's basically Trump is a racist, America's racist, and all racists, you know, are, you know, this happened then, it's still happening now. And that's what I took more from this, rather than kind of focusing on the bits that Spike Lee had slightly added to the narrative to do that. So it was a different watch. The first time I watched it, it was like, oh my God, this is like a true story. This really happened. Crazy. And then the second time I watched it, because I'd had a look into which bits were the added bits, instead of being annoyed about that, it made me see it in a different way.
I think we kind of slightly differ on films that are made based on true stories, and that if there's elements, if the main kind of thrust of the story is true, then obviously embellishment for narrative storytelling is, for me, is absolutely fine. And I didn't expect all of this to be. More of this was true than I thought it was going to be. To be perfectly honest with you, so I was like, I really enjoy the fact that when they're all crowded around the telephone, and Ron Stallworth is like, again, putting his white voice on and like making it fun, and speaking to David Duke, the head of the KKK, and basically saying things like, "Oh, but if you can tell." If I was you'd be able to tell what a black man sounds like by the way that they talk, wouldn't you, or something like that? And all his like police buddies are just around him like sniggering away. And reading that was true, just kind of, I really took heart from that, because I was like, what must have been so hard for him being like the only black police officer in that station, but knowing that people were there supporting him in that really like joyous, hilarious way. It's so nice, and just really enjoyed that fact. Yeah, I mean, the fact he actually spoke to David Duke on the phone is insane.
It's stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's so good. Like, it's so crazy that it was true that he actually got his own thing signed by David Duke. His actual,
he still got it.
Yeah, still got it.
Yeah.
I think there's a YouTube clip of him
wall in the station.
I think there's a YouTube clip of the real Ron Stallworth just like showing his card. But I think the comedic elements, I think this film's super important and awesome, and the comedic elements help you to like drive you through the film. John David Washington and Adam Driver are both amazing in this, and they work off each other like so fantastically. And,
good.
And I think if the Spike is kind of pulled off a masterstroke in making the engaging, and the comedy's there, but also he's putting like there's a few key points. Like at the start, I think it's the end of Gone with the Wind. In the middle, you've got the lynching of Jesse Washington, which is absolutely horrific. And at the end, you've got the Charlottesville. All these kind of points to say, hey, this story was like a while ago, but these things still do happen. And that's how as Helen was saying, that's how he makes it relevant to now.
And having the KKK, when they have their swearing-in ceremony, watching Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
It's like this still does happen. But it is, I mean, it is a funny film. It is a funny film.
It is. I laughed so hard. Like I watched it repeat with my housemate Fiona, and she was so tense throughout the whole thing because it was the first time that she'd watched it, and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so scared! Like I don't know what's going to happen. I can't enjoy the comedy because it's too stressful." Where I was just sat there like giggling away.
This is it. Like you have to wring comedy out of situations like this, because how else are you gonna, deal with like some of the overt racism that's in there? You've got to draw the humour and kind of go, do you know what? I'm going to rise above it. I'm going to get my revenge whatever way I can. And if that's taking down crazy KKK people, it's taking down crazy KKK people. Or it's, finding the time to laugh with Spike Lee at really insane racism.
There's like, that also comes into like real life, because sometimes if something happens to me that's like, racist, whatever, some bigotry in my life, and I'll like potentially like text a friend about it or whatever, like I'll get either like a gif from BlacKkKlansman, like, with the right white man you can do anything, or like the white tears gif from like Atlanta. And like, it is important to like laugh at these things and just be like, it's like, oh, that person gets what you're talking about, and they also get how like rubbish it is. But you're like, the humor kind of like makes it easier to deal with, which I think is why it's important to have it like in films like this. Although I did. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and also some of the white characters are so stupid in it that you just can't help laugh at them. Like the Klansman's wife,
Connie. I was going to talk about her.
I mean, she's so stupid, but also so terrifying as well. That she's one of like two main women in it. So you've got Patrice, who's obviously, awesome, cool, everything you'd ever want to be. And then you've got Connie.
Like the bit where she's like running around and she's not sure what to do and she's panicking and stuff, and it's like, yeah, actually in a situation where you're doing something this dumb, you would be running around panicking, and then you are like kind of
she has a bomb at this point, everyone, because
and you're like, oh, I just wanted to like trip up and blow herself up or something. You want her to like do something stupid where she blows herself up. In the end, obviously, spoilers, she ends up blowing her husband up, which is like really
hilarious.
Funny.
And the other dumb guys, Ivanhoe, and also Felix as well, is like the worst. And those kind of face-offs with Felix and Flip are really terrifying. You can really see.
They're very tense, aren't they?
They're quite homoerotic, though.
Do you reckon?
Like, I was just like, this guy is... I don't know if that was...
wants to suck his Jew dick. That's what he wants to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
but that's it.
Maybe it's code everything gay, but I was like, this guy has some issues he needs to work out. And I think there's to do with him being secretly gay. That's why he has so much hatred. Just sort that out and he'll be fine.
It explains everything. It really does.
Let's talk about it. The main two guys, John David Washington. How much do you guys know about him before this?
I'd never seen him in a thing, and I was so impressed.
I was so stupid. I was watching it and I was like going, oh my God, his voice is so familiar. Like just listen to his voice. And I was like, and then looked it up, I went, oh, that's why, because he's Denzel's
Do you think it sounds that similar to
my mother-in-law did the same
But more
thing.
importantly, it's also he's Paulette Washington's son as well, as he brought up in lots of interviews. He was all like, everyone was asking him about the influence of his dad on his acting, and it's like, well, remember, my mom was the breadwinner, and always bringing that up, and I really respected him when I heard him in interviews as well. So I didn't know anything from his work previously, but now I'm following him, and obviously I've heard he's really great in Tenet. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm very excited about seeing him in that. And then Adam Driver, I mean, I worship
in anything. I'd watch him in anything.
He is so good, so nuanced. Whatever it is, if it's comedy, if it like I'm obsessed with him in a really, really bad rom-com with Daniel Radcliffe called What If. Love the man, and also
on my
when
list,
he was
so
in that,
that's good to hear. It's on my list to watch because I will also watch him everything. So that's a recommendation. That's bumped that one up for me. Thank you.
He's so funny, and then when you see him doing dramatic stuff, when you see him being Kylo Ren, I mean, there is nothing Adam Driver can't do, and he's not Jewish, so he can literally do everything.
What's interesting to me is that they're both. I saw John David Washington in a TV series called Ballers, which is like the American football version of Sex and the City, or what was that male one?
Oh wow.
So it came from
Entourage.
Yeah. So it come from a HBO show, a la Adam Driver in Girls. So both companies kind of HBO show. I don't know. I'm sure he's done more before that, John David Washington. But they've come from these shows where like, oh, these guys are quite cool-ish. And in Ballers, he doesn't play that sympathetic a character. And I genuinely did not know until BlacKkKlansman that he was Denzel Washington's son, which is great because he's forging his own career and he's doing his own thing, exactly what you want. But I think he's great. I didn't like him that much in the first season of Ballers, but he gets better and better. But his character is a bit of a tool, so maybe just plays a tool fantastically. But in this, he's just the scene where he's outside Colorado Springs and he's got his afro on and he's just getting it just so.
One of my favorites.
He's fantastic, and as you said, Adam Driver, everything from I loved him in Girls. I think even through to the last series of Girls, I think he was one of the best things in it. Through till Marriage Story recently, and Kylo Ren, he was one of the best things in the recent Star Wars. Let's not go down that route, but he definitely.
He's also he can sing as well. And
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
What's he singing?
He's great.
So he sings in Marriage Story, and he also sings in Inside
Llewyn Davis, which is a great thing
as well.
I love that film.
He even meows at the cat in Inside Llewyn Davis.
That for you gives him what bonus stars from you.
Yeah. The cat meows and he goes meow and carries on with his line.
And is it Patterson he was in as well, where he's playing the Marine? Oh, he's just, he's so talented.
We've just turned into Adam Driver stan.
But then my favourite scene in this film with John David Washington is the scene where he's being interviewed at the beginning, and it's like the two of them, it's the black guy and it's the police chief, and they're like, and the police chief's kind of pussyfooting around it going, and how would you feel if someone called you a racial slur? And then the other guy's just like, if someone calls you, and he's like straight into it, and he's like, I would have a very severe problem with that, but I'd keep my cool. And it's just like, he's so measured, and I love that he's like, clearly getting agitated, clearly like, I would not really want to have to take it, but I'm used to it. I'm a black man. I'm used to sucking this stuff up. And he conveyed all of that in like this one scene, that he's used to sucking up and taking it. He wouldn't be pleased if someone had called it. He wouldn't be pleased if one of his colleagues was racist towards him. But he managed to convey all of that with, no, sir, I'd be fine. I'd just do my job. And I was like, I thought it was so great. It was such a wonderful performance.
That was a bit of Isaiah Whitlock Jr. stunt casting from The Wire, and he gets his theme. He gets his she in there at the start of that scene. Guys, we want to talk about any particular scenes before we go to the scores?
I mean, I'd talk about the whole thing, but in regards to what has always been happening in the world, but what has been shown more and more on like videos online, the scene at the end where Ron is like, I'm a police officer, and they don't believe that he's a police officer, and the police immediately go and try and arrest
him,
Ron, for a crime that was committed by the racist woman whose name I forget.
Connie.
I think my brain is refusing to remember her name. I've watched it so many times, and it's like, no. Ron has got her on the ground because she has a bomb, and the police come, and they don't believe that she just shouts that he's trying to attack her, that he's trying to rape her, and the police, even before she shouts that, the police are running towards him.
Yeah.
They beat him, they cuff him, and then it's only when Flip, Adam Driver's character, comes and like pulls them off him and says he's a police officer, that's the only time they actually listen. And I think that's really relevant even now, and that's probably why it was added to the
narrative, to the story,
to the script.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was exactly what I was going to talk about, and that basically her first instinct is to, he's raping me, arrest that man, and it's, this is Spike Lee saying, this is happening, like, you cannot ignore it. And there's other, like, bits in it that are so just, like, slipped in there. Like, cops have been shooting black people in the back, like, all the time then. They're still doing it now. Like, there's comedy in there, but there's so many,
poignant,
like, real shocking moments in there that, again, watching it the second time round, This is Spike Lee saying, this shit is happening. It happened then. It's still happening now. What are you going to do about it? And I think we kind of forget the kind of importance and the body of work that Spike Lee's done. And for this film, it was his first director nomination. And this guy has been making film like longer than I've been alive, I think, just about, well, as long as I can remember. And it's his first nomination. And he's made some fucking amazing films. And yet this is his first nomination. And it's just, that's how little things have progressed in our times.
Okay, Esther, sorry, you had a point to make about the white police officer. I should just say Esther might be a bit quieter than she was at the first half of the episode, but let's go with it. Esther.
Yes, so excuse my technical issues. I just wanted to say, my scene that I really found really powerful was both the scene where Patrice was being harassed by the white police early on in the film after the Stokely Carmichael lecture, and then later on when they get their sort of sense of resolution about it, when they manage to get the guy on tape admitting that he thought he could do anything as a police officer and it was basically his right to do whatever he liked to anyone he wanted. So those two scenes, I thought they were really powerful because that feeling of being, kind of harassed by the police and not knowing what they might want to do to you, but also the fact that they were able in the film, which probably isn't realistic and didn't happen in real life, and have that resolution of having at least one racist officer and corrupt officer getting his comeuppance. I felt like that was a really nice thing that was in the film, and that made me feel really kind of upbeat about how they resolved it in the end.
That made me sad. It had the complete opposite effect on me.
Or because it doesn't happen that way, or we don't think it happens that way?
Because it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
I was like, this is how you know it's a film. Because
this is Inception.
Yeah. Because there needs to be a resolution for a film to be tied up nicely with a bow. And there was, but that's not how it happens in real life.
Yeah, I kind of see that as almost like a fantasy scene. There's like, this is how it could happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what we hear about with the cops in America. Is that it's super hard to for them to get kicked off the force or even put in prison for things that they do, whether it's at, specifically at people in generally. But if they do anything illegal when they're wearing the badge, then it's almost fine. They're above the law, which is not the case.
Yeah, and also the fact that they needed, like, I know I joked earlier, I said with the right white man you could do anything, but the fact that they needed the white police officers there to be the witnesses of everything that happened is also like really telling. Like, people could say, oh, it's because they were, the chief or whatever, but it's still the same situation. It's very rarely that people of color are believed, even in these situations. So
maybe with this being something that Lee added to the story, this is him saying, look, guys, do this. This could be a way that you start sorting shit out. Maybe he's just going,
it's not that
just
hard.
A thought, or this is how it's done. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it's if only life was like that and it was that easy.
I have a question. Do you guys think it was harder for white people to watch or people of color to watch?
I think it has,
or for different reasons, hard for different reasons.
Different reasons. It's differences of of different difficulties watching it, or different resonances, I should say, that's with that as well. I
guess what I'm looking for is what I think I'm trying to say is, like, do you think it was more shocking? Because there's a lot in there that I expected, and I think some people who watched it in the cinema were like gasping or very like shaken when they came out, which is good. It's the effect that it should have. But I think for a lot of people who maybe hadn't thought about how brutality and institutional racism still affects us today, and thinks it's maybe something that is in the past, like, kind of got shaken awake a little bit. Hopefully, anyway, and hopefully it wasn't too traumatic of a way for it to happen.
Before we head to the scores, let's just talk about the very, very ending of it, which is we see the Charlottesville marches, and then the outcry against that, and then the car running into all those people. And when I first saw it, the film, I haven't seen it 2 times. When I first saw it, I was like, Spike, that's a bit unfair, mate. Come on. But then I was like, no, that needs to be there to show that this stuff is still happening. It's still, because it wasn't obviously the narrative of the film, so it didn't need to be in the narrative of, it didn't need to be in the film itself. That's why I was a bit like, come on, dude. But it's such a powerful way to end it, and I think, you know, he's wholly justified in doing that. So what are your thoughts on?
I think people should be shocked and traumatized and upset by watching it, because it's a true story. And, you know, there's fictionizations, but, you know, like, what the fuck, America? I know the UK isn't innocent, but honestly, the thought of America right now is just terrifying. And, you know, Trump is a racist, and he's just the worst human being, and let alone the worst human being to be put as a leader of America. How did we get into a state where Donald Trump is the president of America, where someone is allowed a platform and a power with those kind of views? It's just like, and people say, oh, you can't be political, you can't do that. It's like, you know, fuck Trump. Like, I just feel powerless being over here.
I think the point of the film is that there is white supremacy in the White House, and interweaving that into the current narrative is absolutely vital, because, and he does it again with the narrative at the end of Defy Blood. So not talking about the film as a whole, but he's again interwoven footage of now into the end of that, because nothing's changed. That narrative is still there. So I do think it's really, really important that that's a part of the film, even though it's talking about a historical moment, because the effects of that historical moment haven't passed.
Right, let's head to the scores, guys.
Hello, I'm Sam Pay.
And I'm Martin Zoltz-Orstwick.
And we are the two hosts of a podcast called Song by Song, where we listen every week to a track by the musical artist Tom Waits. You might know him for his gravelly voice, very nice, his appearance in films, but also his multi-decade spanning career involving blues, jazz, and all sorts of other kinds of experimental music.
So we're basically like a book club for Tom Waits, and if that sounds like your cup of tea, you can find us at songbysongpodcast.com or wherever you get podcasts.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
All of these scores are out of 5. You may have decimal places if you wish, and we will start with you, Jazz, because you picked it with your recommendability, please.
I think it would depend on the person to like make sure they're not a racist. Don't want that person watching it. But 5.
Esther,
I'm gonna go with 4.8.
4.8.
Because 4.8. Normally I don't actually agree with decibels, but
what are you marginalising decibels for?
I just think make a decision and stick with it. So I'm going with 4.8 though, because I think there's some people who don't need to watch it because they know this story. So for the 0.2% of people for whom this is, you know, nothing new or might be re-traumatising for them, that's the 0.2. But anyone else, absolutely highly recommended.
Helen?
Yeah, so I was a bit conflicted about what to give, because I think everyone should see it, but actually now hearing you, Esther, saying that people who this is like a real lived-in experience and, you know, they see it every day, maybe they don't want to see it as a form of entertainment. But I also think that racists should see it, and, you know, it might make them change their views. If it does that, then that's a good thing. So I'm going to give it 4.9.
I'm going to 4.5. I think it's an excellent film, and it is more accessible than you think it is, and it tells a harder and more hard-hitting story than I think it is. And I think some people just be like, oh, I don't want to watch that, for a variety of different reasons, whether it's lived-in experience or they feel it's going to be tougher, then that's their own prerogative. But yeah, 4.5. Repeat viewing score. Jass, you've seen it the most. And again, nothing wrong with that.
I'm trying not to give it 5 for everything.
You can give it 5 for everything if you want. It's like completely your choice.
No, thinking about it before, because I wouldn't want to watch it on a day where I was already seeing a lot of that in the news. Like I can watch it in pretty much any mood, but sometimes it might just make things a little bit worse. So 4.
Esther.
Oh, I'm going to go 4 as well, because I actually genuinely didn't think I was ever going to watch it again. And then I actually did get quite a lot of reviewing it. And I think I should be bringing it to more people and watching it with more people. But I can see why, once you've seen it, you don't feel the need to watch it again.
Helen.
So I think having seen it the first time, coming to it for the second time, I think I was a bit more relaxed watching it and less sort of tense about not knowing what was going to happen. And I think the second time round, I could enjoy the comedic moments a bit more. So I definitely think it's a film that you can get a lot out of from watching again. And I was really happy that you picked it, because I saw it popped up and I was like, oh, this popped up. And then it's like, reason to watch it. So I'm going to go probably a 4 again. 4 in the 4 club.
I'm going to go 4.1 here. I think it's
just to beat us, just be slightly higher than us.
Yeah, but the repeat recommendability was lower, so So repeat viewing score for me, 4.1. I think I wasn't expecting, like Esther, I don't think I was planning to watch it again, at least anytime soon. I think sometimes films with a moral are harder to go back in there, wherever the moral is or where it's based on. But I think, like I said at the start with Spike, how he's kind of balanced the entertainment factor and the story in it, I think is one of the best parts of it, one of the best things about this film. We've talked about Tyrannosaur a couple of times, Helen, and that's a film where I can't think of any kind of reason to maybe watch it again. But this is certainly a film where someone said, let's watch it again, and be like, actually, yeah, it'll be fine. Let's do it. Small screen score. Jass.
4.5.
You saw this at cinema, right?
And at home, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you thought it's perfectly fine for being at home?
I mean, it might be better for some people to watch at home so they can actually start having conversations about things that happen in it.
Esther?
I was also going to go 4.5. I thought it was amazing on the big screen, and I do think that is absolutely the best experience. I don't think it lost that much, though, by watching it on my TV at home.
Helen?
I'm also going to go with 4.5, and Esther's just said everything I was going to say, so I agree.
Let's have a 4.5 loving all together.
Yeah.
Jass, engagement score?
5. It's hard not to talk about it. It's hard not to talk about it after you've seen it, while you're watching it. It's hard not to watch it and then watch it with a friend and just stare at them while they're in shock the whole time. And just generally Spike Lee and the way that he engaged massive audiences in general, and how on a smaller scale it creates engagement between people watching it.
Esther?
I hate just agreeing with Jass, but then I'm going to have to do it. I'm giving it a 5 because I have talked about it a lot since it's come out. And, I've been talked to consistently over the years. Do you know what I mean? It continues to be relevant. And the way it's told, it's a really engaging story. So, yeah, 5.
Helen?
Yeah, so I'm also going to give it a 5. This is it came out in 2018, and it's still relevant, and it was made about a story from the 70s, and it's still relevant. And it's interesting what you were saying, Jass, that this is Lee's second most commercially successful film, which is really interesting compared to sort of obviously his other work, which has probably gone under the radar. So the fact that now Spike Lee is mainstream, I think is really great. There's
a lot of people who it would have been their first film of his that they've seen. So hopefully they'll go back and watch the other ones.
Yeah, I'm going to go 5 as well. I think it's once you start watching it, you're in it all the way through, and it deserves your attention. So that gives us an overall score of 4.58125, which is massive. Well, pretty good.
It's a big score.
Is it winning? Does it win? Does it win anything? No, okay.
It doesn't win everything, but it's great. Take that away from it. Okay, yeah, so just as a reminder to everyone listening now, do follow us at Flixwatcher Pod, because mainly because we do let people know before we go into recording and ask for shout-outs and reviews. So in this case, the tweet was, we're reviewing BlacKkKlansman with She Geek Beham and Jass
Thethi
from Well-Spoken Teas. Have you seen it? Gives your thoughts and a score out of 5 stars for a shout-out on Flixwatcher. We had a fair few responses from this one. Jass, can you see the tweets?
Yes, I can.
Do you want to read out the first one that you can see on your list?
Pop Cannon said, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Job well done all round. John David Washington and Adam Driver are fantastic throughout. So they agreed with what we said earlier. Also, love Topher Grace's David Duke. Yep. He really helped prove the kind of ghastly evil can just beat anybody. Solid 4.5 stars.
Nice. Esther?
Yeah, so we've got quite a few. 4.5 stars from Movie Reviews in 20 Questions podcast. 4.5 stars, solid flick from start to finish. Totally dug the camaraderie between Washington and Driver. The ending is one hell of a gut punch. Can't disagree with that. Yeah.
Helen?
And the last one is from Steve EILFM podcast.
Everything I Learned from Film podcast.
5 stars. Great flick with great performances and a real sense of not knowing what's going to happen.
Excellent. Well, guys, can you, Esther and Jass, sign off by telling us where we can find you online and where to find your podcast? And then we'll say bye to everyone listening.
Yeah, sure. So you can find our podcast on at well_spoken_teas. That's our Twitter handle. And our podcast is called Well-Spoken Tokens. You can find it on Spotify, Anchor, or wherever you get your podcasts. And Esther, do you want to say where everyone can find you?
So I'm at She Geek Beham on Twitter and on Instagram. I mainly just tweet about culture, often nerdy stuff, intersectional feminism, and what films I'm watching.
A nice mixed bag there. Well, thank you very much for joining us, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
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 Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.
These are violent criminals, so they're not going to go down easy.
ABC Tuesdays.
Let's get this done.
The Rookie is back.
We have 2 new rookies starting today.
Howdy.
Being a cop is stressful 24/7. Every year on the job is different.
And Training Day.
We have a serial killer at large.
Never ends.
We need an ambulance!
The Rookie. All new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.